Have you ever signed a contract and immediately wondered if you left money on the table? Well, that feeling doesn't go away. It sits there for 13 weeks, reminding you that you took the first decent number you saw because you were tired of looking. Tallywise lets you upload that offer and watch other employers try to beat it. Tallywise, get a better offer, guaranteed.
You're listening to Nurse Converse, presented by Nurse.org, a collaborative podcast amplifying diverse nurse voices. Get ready for a dose of inspiration, a sprinkle of education, and a whole lot of community.
Hey nurses, welcome back to another episode of Nurse Converse. I'm your host, Jana Price. And we have, coming back on episode 2, is Amanda and Dave Repsher. If you guys have not heard the first episode, you're going to need to go back and listen to it. It is incredible. Let me give you a little bit of a backstory. We're talking about Dave Repsher, who was, both Dave and Amanda are nurses. Dave was in a helicopter crash in 2015 that left him with 90% TBSA burns and was in the hospital for over a year. Many setbacks, many tragedies. Did not think that he was going to survive. His wife, Amanda, also a critical care nurse, was with him by his side. And in our first episode, they told us the story from the day of the incident up until where we left off was that we left off on the last episode of Dave had a thoracotomy and his chest was bleeding in his chest. Chest was wide open. He was in septic shock for months. He had still massive burns. He was somehow just starting to maybe show signs of getting better, and yet another setback. And some of the words that came out of Dave's mouth when going through all this were, "I want to die." And obviously Dave is here with us today, and that is not what happened. But the story, as Dave described, is the perfect storm of good. And if you're hearing that, you're hearing that this man who survived a 90% TBSA can actually, the words came out of his mouth, the perfect storm of good. That just goes to show that Dave is an incredible person, an incredible attitude, a fantastic nurse, and his wife, who stuck with him from day one till now, constantly providing him care, not only as the person, the love of his life, but as a critical care nurse, advocating for him by his bedside the whole time as a nurse. It's just a pleasure and an honor. Thanks for coming back, guys. Thank you for being willing to tell your story. We truly appreciate it. All right, guys. So we're going to jump right in. And if like I said, if you haven't listened to episode 1, you need to go back and listen to it. But if you have, you know that we left off with Dave is still in the hospital and he has just gone through having a thoracotomy. His chest is open. He is, I believe he's trached at this point. He is done some physical therapy, but he, like Dave called it, was like a shutter, right, Dave? That you just getting glimpse of camera shots as you're going through, and you're just trying to, you wake up and you think, this is not how I want life to be. But as it goes through, you're here with us now. Tell us through all of this, when you started to remember, when you started to have some memories come and stick, if you will, that you decided, no, I'm going to fight. When did that become the reality that you said, I'm going to fight for my life?
Well, I'll kind of look over Amanda as I tell this, because she can tap me on the shoulder and tell me it's wrong. But after that, that next day, after Amanda came back, and after I drifted right off to sleep after that I was now thinking I want to die, and I was up and down, but I drifted back off, and the next day, the healthcare team assembled, and and it was, from what I remember, it was a very honest and frank discussion, and like it needed to be. Like, we can't sugarcoat things. And the burn surgeon is a dear friend to this day, and and that's his style, and it's very well needed. Is that you have to be honest with the patients, and
Right.
And he laid it out step by step, and like, I shouldn't be here, and can't tell you what's around the next corner, but if we keep going, like, this is going to be, as Amanda said earlier, a marathon, and and there's no guarantees. Like it could, could not be an outcome at all, or it could be a terrible outcome or whatever. So, and I think once I got my wits about me a little bit more too, like Amanda would come in and tell me the same story and over and over and over again for like 9 hours. And, kind of filled me in on everything that had gone on for the last 5.5 months. And, just us talking and crying a lot, decided that we're going to give this a shot and see how things go. And so, once we made that decision together, that's really, that was sort of this day one for me, I guess, really making, that waking up and it truly was, it was, we call them dark days or, whatever, puny days, whatever you want to say. But from that point on, like the dark days outnumbered the good days by, exponential amount, like it was always a fight. And, but we, part of these discussions was that, number one, we want to do our part to make sure that something like this never happens to anyone else. And part of that was surviving and going on. And number two, I think the most important one, or another very important one too, is that we can't be angry about what happened. And because, anger just will consume you and, drive everything, in the wrong direction. And so, that with my, extreme ADD, probably, I can't stay focused on anything for too long, but really from that point on, it was always looking forward instead of dwelling on what happened in the past. And so, that was, I think, another really important step for me to continue forward. And so, I would have, terribly unrealistic aspirations. I'd be sitting in there in bed going like, hey, it's, March coming up here in a couple of months. I'm going to get back to my kayak and we're going to go down here or whatever, we're going to go hiking or bike and whatever. And the staff would be like, sure, Dave, whatever, but they wouldn't, but, they wouldn't say, no, you're not, look at you, you're in bed, you can't breathe, you can't eat, you can't move. But they would, they weren't being dishonest with me, but they were, that they're just being compassionate and allowing me to, to have those sort of goals, even though everyone knows I wasn't going to make them. But again, for me, that was a very important, mindset for me to have that something to look forward to the whole time.
Right. And that hope.
Yeah. The hope. And, and to have the staff recognize that, they knew it was important to me and, to get back to as much of that lifestyle as I could. And so, I think they took that to heart, and plus my, hospital room looked like we were hoarders because we had so much, memorabilia and pictures and whatever up there, so, but I think it was important for the staff, to see that who we were and who we want to try to get back to being. And, that I was physically active and, that was important to me. And so, my hospital stay was, all over the place. To this day, if you I can't remember really day-to-day activities, but I can still remember my hallucinations. And that's what I was really doing for most of that time. Because I was still 5 months of, septic shock that I was going through there. I was, altered mentally for a good chunk of it. And, I was in all kinds of crazy paces. And I look back and, look and laugh at some of the things I was experiencing at the time, but they were vividly real in every sense. And, I think people talk about that a lot. When I was a nurse too, see someone there that's, they're just kind of there, they're sedated or they're, sick, they're altered, and you don't really know what they're thinking. And, you don't know what to do. But I will tell you this is that, there are times that hearing Amanda's voice and having that steady presence really, really brought me out of some really deep, dark holes that I didn't know if I was going to come back out of if I didn't have that, that presence. And so for the healthcare team to let her be in the room and, even it was her just reading a book to me or whatever it was, just hearing that voice and having that constant presence was, the priority of my recovery. Like I couldn't have done without it. And,
Right.
I know people that, do this stuff alone, but like all the power to them. Cause like, I don't think I'd be here without the support we have. I know I wouldn't be. And, but it was, I just throw that in because it's like, you don't know if people are always there when you're, doing care on them, if they're, you don't know what they're experiencing, but just being on that other side is like, sometimes you are there and having people coming in and touch you and explain what you're doing. Hey, we have to do this procedure. We're doing this. We're going to, do some wound care or whatever, but just having that, doesn't take much time, doesn't take any effort. Just when you come into the room, it's like, introduce yourself and, explain what you're doing. Cause even though you may think someone's fully sedated and, out of it, is that there's a chance that they're in there and that
Right.
they are.
Wow. That's powerful to hear because we hear that a lot. We hear lots of studies coming out. Talk to your patients. We hear about ICU delirium, lots of things going on. And I think that's important for nurses to hear coming from a nurse who was sedated, intubated, had delirium on the ICU. Have that connection, show that compassion, treat them like they are another patient that is awake, because it doesn't matter if they're intubated, sedated. There's still a patient, there's still a person. They still deserve that human connection and that constant respect and that talk. So it's interesting to hear that coming from a nurse. So, well, I've heard it said before, but I've actually never heard it out of the mouth of a nurse who was also a patient. So,
and I'm guilty, like, right. Like before when I was on the other side, right.
right.
You intubated, sedated someone and, kind of went about your duties and,
Right.
But like now having that experience, it's even if it's just a simple touch on the hand or whatever it is, it's just like, those kind of connections are, that compassion, that, intimacy, with your patient really can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Huge part of healing. And that's, as we've talked about before, that's the difference in being a brand new nurse and somebody who's grown into nursing and knows what truly being a nurse is. And like anybody can start an IV, anybody can intubate, anybody can learn to do meds, but learning how to stop and take a moment, realize in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of no matter what the situation is, you guys have told so many stories, especially on the past episode, of people, nurses, healthcare workers in the moment, stopping in the middle of your chaotic situation and saying, wait a second, the most important thing right now is connection with these two human beings. That is what is more healing at this moment. Simultaneously, while doing their job, they stop, and it's recognizing as a nurse in that moment, my job is not only to provide this medical care, but this healing human touch. And that's what makes nurses so, so, so important. And it took me a while in my career learning later on after seeing many ill people, many people who were in your position but did not make it. Realizing that the human life is the most important thing, and connection, whether it be in the moment of survival or even in the moment of passing, taking a moment and saying this person's life means something, and what am I going to do to have respect and to acknowledge this person, whether they be alive or they've passed. I think that's really important. And thank you for bringing that up, because I hope everybody out there is hearing this from a nurse and somebody who's gone through it. Be there have that connection with your patient, that intimacy. So thank you. Dave, I want to say you go through and you've been in the hospital quite some time and you're getting better. I do know this part of the story. Correct me anywhere I'm wrong, but you're getting better. You've got PT. You eventually start to walk on your own and you're getting better. But as we all know, antibiotics take their toll. All the medicine that you had to be on, they take their toll. And one of the biggest setbacks came in the form of you had kidney failure. and you needed a kidney transplant. So there's a great person who comes into the story, and we definitely want to give him a shout out and kudos, because what a great story. But tell us a little bit about how that came about. What did it feel like to get this far? And now, where in the perfect storm of good does your kidney transplant fit in?
Well, we through all this, we got an apartment right off the edge of the medical campus, and so we got out of the hospital, but we were still there like every day. We didn't go home for 3 years afterwards. That's when we first went home. And so, that we got out of the hospital and we were faced doing dialysis. And we did it, having medical training and all that. Amanda did my dialysis at home, and we did it 5 nights a week for 4 hours at a time. And that was life. That's everything revolved around dialysis. So the stress, and people may say, you may hear this before, but dialysis keeps you alive, but there's no way to live. And it couldn't be truer. It's miserable. I felt terrible, and diet restrictions, fluid restrictions, everything that goes with it. It kind of keeps you going, and you just have to hang on for a donor. And so, from my standpoint, I was still medically frail. I had to go through, months and months, and was it about a year?
Yeah, it was the dialysis for a year. Well, home dialysis for a year.
Yeah, just to get me healthy enough, to be able to have a transplant. And Amanda, again, the stress on Amanda doing this was dramatic.
Sucked.
It sucked. I don't know.
I still can't listen to the 911 call the first time that I had to call when we were doing dialysis in the apartment, and I thought he was dying. I mean, he just went completely unresponsive on me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was stressful.
Yeah.
Oh, to say the least. Yeah. Suck is yeah. We'll probably use stronger words, but for the audience, yeah, I would definitely agree. That sucks. So, wow.
With some of this, yeah, there's some humor in all this too, right? You have to try to keep a sense of humor through some of this stuff. But part of me was we were both very independent people before the crash, and then and that's something you lose, obviously, being in a patient room, in a hospital, and all of a sudden you're 100% dependent on others. And so for me, and I think for most people, gaining any percentage or fraction of independence back means the world. And, for me to be able to, get myself back and forth to the hospital, even though it was a couple blocks away, that was independence. And so part of my doing that was I couldn't, with my hands and all that, I couldn't really ride a bike. So I got a tricycle, and to get
with a big basket
to get me back and forth. And so,
and a bell.
Yeah. And so,
awesome.
Yeah. The beach cruiser or whatever it is, and so so to get my dialysis supplies back and forth to the hospital, I'd load up my trike with all these boxes of dialysate and all that kind of stuff, and I'd be riding through campus, all proud, riding my trike back and forth. And, but for me, that was the world, because I was doing it sort of on my own,
Right.
So, but Amanda, tell her about the weight story.
Oh, well, when he was in the hospital, I put on 30 pounds and, stressed. And then when we were doing dialysis, I lost 40 pounds in that year.
Because of the stress of doing dialysis.
Yeah. I didn't even want to eat. I mean, it was just so not only are you you're out of the hospital, so you don't have any support or any help. And he wasn't a candidate for a fistula. So we were doing his dialysis through the catheter. So we had to, take really good care of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was stressful. So it was just, it
Wow.
was 5 hours of, by the time we hook them up, run it, and then unhook. And that entire time, it's just like, okay, what's going to go wrong? Please don't anything go wrong. And then a couple times it did,
So you're a dialysis nurse for 5 hours of the day. Both of you are. You're both are nurses. You're giving it, but you're the patient receiving it. 2 nurses, critical situation, doing dialysis at home after surviving well over a year in the most critical condition that you could be in. And now you're at home having to do this. But like you said, you're critical, but you're riding a tricycle, a beach cruiser to the hospital and that just, I'm just blown away. I mean, what a will determination to say, like you said, we're going to do good. We're not going to be angry. We're going to find humor in this. And, but you still how long did you have to wait before you were able to get a kidney transplant?
So it was about a year since we got out of the hospital or so. And then
unbelievably short time.
Yeah. So
thanks to Matt.
Like super lucky, like super fortunate, like this whole thing, perfect storm of good. It's just like things fell into place. And I think one of the hardest things we went through in that time period is that Matt had come forward like about 6 months or so.
I believe it was March when we got the phone call. We were sitting in our psychologist's office actually when we got the phone call that we had a donor, and all 3 of us were crying.
It's Nurses Month, and we're celebrating big at Nurse.org. We're not just doing one giveaway, we're giving away hundreds of prizes all month long. That's right, you can win instantly and enter every single day. We're talking Amazon, Visa, Walmart, Starbucks gift cards, plus shoes, scrubs, and so much more from brands nurses actually love. Don't miss out. Head to nurse.org/win to enter now through May 31st. And make sure you're following at nurse.org on Instagram for even more chances to win all month long.
And it was gut wrenching too, because like, here's our donor, but then they wouldn't, it wasn't cleared medically to get it, to receive it yet.
Oh, wow.
And so like this whole time, like, okay, check box. What else do I have to do? And like, just praying the whole time is like that Matt wasn't just going to change his mind or find something else, find someone else or whatever. And so I'm like, it was terrifying the whole time. And so luckily Matt, like, he stuck with it. And
they gave us the choice. They said it has to be mutual. Mm-hmm. If you both want to know who you are. Otherwise we keep it confidential. And so I left that one up to Dave, and it took him a while to decide whether he wanted to know who the donor was or not.
Wow.
And I'm glad we made that choice.
Oh, it's just, Matt's a brother now.
Matt's a brother.
Oh, amazing. And this is Matt Martinez is the donor we're talking about. And how did you find Matt? How did he find you?
So, in the organ world out there, like, it's very hard to find a live donor, obviously. And so again, we had a whole army, there's none of this we did alone, like we had help out there everywhere. And, my mom was volunteering up at Copper Mountain and, on this, side of the ski patrol. And, so word got out up there, and Matt was working up at Copper as well. So he heard the story and he stepped forward to get tested. And, as it turns out, he's also getting tested for a friend of his who needed a kidney. And, it just turns out that I was the match friend. But, and so I didn't know that. We didn't know that at the time. We didn't know Matt until surgery. And so,
well, we met him in the office before.
Right before, yeah. And so, and so to finally go in there and, have that transplant, like, that's what I really look back as my true start of recovery. Mm-hmm. So I was so sick through the dialysis and so sick through everything. It's amazing what those little beans do. Like, it's like you wouldn't think it's just one, one system, but it affects everything. And like really that transplant day is when my recovery started. And it's when I just felt healthy, started feeling healthy again. And, I could look at a big glass of water. I'm like, yes, that was.
And this is the guy who would walk around all day long with a gallon of water before the crash.
Wow.
So it meant that much because they say it's the gift of life, and it, there's no other, way to say it. It really is like, it makes that much of a difference to have a transplant. And, and knock on wood, knock on everything, like things are going great still. And so,
awesome.
and Matt's part of the family. And so,
and his entire family is part of our family.
Just like I said, like you said, but like I wanted to reference, it's the perfect storm of good. Now you met Matt and his family and he gave you the gift of life. I mean, and to say he gave you the gift of life from a kidney, but knowing everything you've gone through, it's just amazing. Everything is a gift. And I do know, and I think what a wonderful gift is. And I definitely want to start moving into all this stuff, but I don't think people know that you guys were not married before the incident, but you got married in the ICU. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that's what you guys told me, that you got married in the hospital. So how long were you guys dating before you decided to get married?
Oh, geez.
I'll rescue you. We were together for 16 years.
16 years, yeah.
Yeah. So we dated for a couple years, then we moved in together. And so we were definitely, a common law married couple at the time of the crash. And everybody at the hospital treated us that way. So the official getting married, though, was in February.
February, yeah. Coming up here, anniversary. And I pushed for February 29th. That way I only have to remember my anniversary every 4 years. But we decided on the 27th. But
wow.
Like it was, being the romantic that I am, we met in the ACLS class and we got married in the ICU.
ICU. I mean, the story of true nursing. If ACLS is out there, I feel like they should probably sponsor you guys.
But
Laura,
what it was for us was, it was a period where Dave was with it. And it was really an opportunity for us to have something happy going on and to just give up, make our commitment official, just to celebrate that, having this special love and then going forward with that. So,
that's amazing. I mean, wow, to say going in and the tragedy and coming out with a wife and a kidney. I mean, Dave, I don't know. The perfect storm of good. It's just incredible. And obviously, guys, I just can't encourage you enough listening out there to go and watch the documentary called It Is on YouTube. You look up Dave Repsher, you'll find all sorts of really interesting stuff. And one of the things I want to move into that really, really ties into nursing and helping is the Dave and Amanda have become advocates, because let's step back to the crash. What happened that day is that the fuel in the helicopter, and Dave, you can come in and you guys can help further this, but the fuel system was not adequate, to say it. In fact, it was what somebody referred to when I was doing my research. The fuel system was not much stronger than a milk jug, is what they called it. So essentially, you've got these healthcare workers, pilots flying patients in a helicopter, and the system that's holding the fuel is essential to a milk jug. And the helicopter that you were in was only 2 years old. So now there's a crash. You can imagine in a crash, a milk jug pours out onto the victims. And this had happened not just today, but in the past. In other crashes, the same systems were in place and the victims were not lucky. And the fuel did pour on them and they did burn and they did not make it. And this happened with in 2018, I haven't done the research past then, but there were 21 incidences of this not happening. So when that came about, Dave and Amanda quickly said, like Dave said, got to make good out of this. And they did. So you guys have been lobbying and there's been a lot of change to produce systems that created the fuel being safer in these types of helicopters. So, but that it wasn't an easy path in. You guys came up with some barriers going in this direction. Once you're better, you're going to advocate, you're coming up on barriers. So walk us through what that looked like when you decided to advocate, what you came up against, and the good that has come out of it now.
Well, as you said, our helicopter is basically brand new. It had less, had like 500 hours on it, which for helicopters, nothing. Helicopters can last for 40 plus years. So, and just like, if you're buying a new car, you would expect it to have all the newest safety standards. And this one was billed as having a lot of safety features, enhanced safety features with it. But not to get too deep into it, but basically even though it was a brand new helicopter in 2014, it was based off a model that was certified in 1977. And so it was only held to the crash worthiness standards from the regulations that were in place on its certification date, which at that point dated all the way back to 1965 when the first safety regulations were developed. And so, in that time since, there's been some legislation that was passed or some rulemaking passed in the FAA that increased those standards, but only for helicopters that were certified basically after 1994. And so today, like the vast majority of the fleet out there, the civilian fleet, is like 85% of the helicopters out there do not have a crash resistant fuel system. And
when you say civilian fleet,
yeah,
includes police,
everything.
news, oil industry, gas and oil industry, the Forest Service. It's basically everything that's not military.
And the military had recognized that this was an issue back in the Vietnam War because they were losing, the infantry in these post-crash fires that were otherwise survivable.
Right.
And so they started making bladders for fuel tanks or breakaway valves, all that stuff back in the Vietnam War. And it just never just transitioned into the civilian fleet. And obviously there's different missions there and different helicopter capabilities and stuff like that. But it remains a problem in the civilian industry, even to this day. Although there's been some, the legislation that was passed in 2018 was what Karen started working on right after the crash. And so Karen is Patrick's widow, and she was able to kind of channelize everything that she went through as well and turn that into into a safety advocacy. And so she gathered up the Colorado legislators and was able to introduce a bill to mandate that all newly manufactured helicopters are required to have a crash resistant fuel system. And we were able to tag on, ride our coattails a little bit there towards the end once we were healthy enough to just, get on that movement. And so, and because of that legislation now is that despite the certification date, every helicopter that's newly manufactured and sold in the U.S. has to have a crash resistant fuel system. And so what we've been doing after that legislation was passed is now trying to push to get the rest of the fleet retrofitted as well. And so we had passed another piece of legislation in it was last year that we're trying to revisit and to get the rest of their fleet retrofitted as well. And so it's a long process. But to get two pieces of legislation through the U.S. Congress in 5 years' time is a pretty remarkable feat, I think.
Yes.
And and I think it's already shown its worth. Like we've got actually just a few weeks ago, we got a text from, a medic who was involved in the crash and just called out thanking us that, because of the systems in place now, that there wasn't a post-crash fire and they were able to walk away.
Wow.
Well, he was able
to walk
yeah.
away. Unfortunately, another nurse died in that crash, but, that was the whole thing that we were fighting for, is that we're just trying to give the crews a chance. And that's all you want. That's all you want in that situation, is you just want the best chance you have of survival and to get away. And, like the whole idea of a crash fuel systems, it's not to prevent all fires, but to give you a few minutes to get away from the helicopter before it ignites. And so, instead of 15 minutes, as a regulation calls out, I had 3 seconds. Yeah. And so,
and just to put it in perspective, Dave was the least physically injured from the crash. So he had some minor transverse process fractures and rib fractures. He literally would have walked away and not even spent a night in the hospital if it weren't for the post-crash fire.
For the fire. Wow. And how, in your best estimate right now, with our flight nurses out there doing the job of a flight nurse, how many would you say are retrofitted?
I think a good percentage of the medical helicopters are equipped with a crash fuel system these days. Especially if you're working for one of the larger conglomerates, I should say.
But not all.
But not all of them. And there's incentives now from various manufacturers to get retrofitted if you're not. But it takes research, right? And that's you have to kind of start asking questions, and it doesn't take much to go out to the hangar and look at kick the tires and see what's underneath there. But and it's whether or not you can get make changes. It's tough, right? Safety's not always an easy sell, but it's it starts with. It has to start with you. Like, you have to go out there and look what's in there and start asking questions and start, holding people accountable, I think, for some of this. And then, we've seen some other organizations who did hold their company to higher standards, and it's worked out well for them. Like, I think once people are educated about what these systems can do, or the lack of safety that's available, that, if a couple of people stand together, that they can really make some good progress on getting safer, equipment and safer helicopters.
And we'll give a shout out to the company that flew Dave from the hospital in Frisco down to University Hospital in Aurora. They had a crash resistant fuel system on their ship. And in the aftermath of what happened, they were actually in the midst of needing new ships and going through a transition where they were upgrading, and they were offered some in a faster time frame that didn't have crash resistant fuel systems. They came together as a group, the nurses, the medics, the entire staff said nope, and they put their foot down, and they demanded that that they get those crash resistant fuel worthy ships, and they had to wait longer. But in terms of it's a little bit scarier, of course, in rural areas, systems that don't have the larger systems to draw from, that may still be out there operating without crash resistant fuel systems. And there is a way to look that up on the FAA website. So Dave, you can you elaborate on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go to the FAA, there's all kinds of resources there. MTSB has stuff as well, but there's lists of helicopters that are compliant.
Wow.
And there are also retrofits available for various models. But it's hard, like companies are forced to take helicopters out of service at times to get retrofits done, and it's a choice, but I think it's a very worthy choice to make. No one wants to go through that situation, but if you're there, seconds count, and we just hope, out of all this that, if it makes a difference in someone's day, that's all we can ask for.
And to put it in perspective, at the time of the crash, 85% of the non-military fleet in the United States did not have crash-resistant fuel systems.
Oh, wow.
Not sure what the statistic is today, and you were specifically asking about air medical. Just anecdotally, from what we're hearing and what we know, the air medical industry has done a very good job of doing a lot of retrofits, but we don't have a number to throw out there to people listening, and just take that first number and kind of, do your own math when you're coming up with that.
When you're thinking about it, it's good advice. Wow. Well, I'm at a loss for words almost, just thinking about everything you've gone through, but how you've come on the end of this and you've made such good come out of this, saving lives. The fact that somebody called you and said, because you pushed for this, I'm able to walk away. And that is such an incredible story to tell. And I know everybody listening, if you've listened to both, you're feeling it. And I hope you're feeling really encouraged. I want to end this off. What does life look like for you guys right now? What is life on the other side of this looking like?
Well, we made a foolish choice, and we got into an ice rink out here in Colorado. So we kind of revived a community ice rink, and that's what we do these days is we run that. And I guess funny how life takes different turns, but skating was a big part of my life before, and that was one of the groups that really came to our side. And it kind of started out as a little philanthropy, and now it's a full-time occupation. And so we're running a business, and we still go around and do some talks and some helicopter safety advocacy. And other than that, try to get out on the trails with the dogs and have a good time, get back on the river when we can.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
And we're also active in burn survivor support. We're becoming a little bit more engaged in that community as we get further into our journey. At first we really couldn't do anything with anybody because it was, like Dave said, we were still in the fight. So.
Right. I can only imagine the things that you guys are doing for that community. That is incredible to know that the hope you must give for the burn survivors and the family is just, as someone who works in that field, hearing your story and has just been, I'm not even a burn survivor, but sometimes I'll think about how I was such an advocate for nurses and violence and injustice. And when things get really hard here in the past, I think, how can I complain when Dave Repsher is out there? After what you've done, it's really hard to complain because you, like you said, you can't be angry. You can't, it will eat you alive. You have to find the good in it. And that's exactly what you guys have done. And it truly was an honor. I did get to watch Dave receive the Lifetime Award for Certified Flight Emergency Nurse at the BCNA conference. And if anybody is deserving of that certification, it is without a doubt you. So it's just been an honor. And I really want to thank you guys for coming on and taking time out of your day, running a business and everything that you do. I know you're busy, but you guys, I have gotten to sit down with you and chat with you, and you have such a heart for nurses, and you have such a heart for the profession and for young and new, and to help them and to put out all of these ideas and all of these encouraging messages and the things that you have to say. Just the life that you two have lived has been such an honor and a testimony to me. And so it's going to be such an honor and a testimony to all the other nurses out there. So I just want to thank you for going through what you've done, and both of you, and Amanda for standing at Dave's side. And thank you, Dave, for fighting so that you could sit here before us today and tell us the story of what it looks like to have hope and to fight. It's so incredible.
Well, thank you. This has been an honor, and hope to see you out there again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for talking to us
Absolutely.
and letting us share our story.
Absolutely. And for you listeners out there, we're going to have lots of information for you on Nurse.org where you can go and watch. We'll have the links to watch the documentary. We'll also have resources out there if you want to get involved and see how Dave and Amanda are working to create better standards for fuel systems and for nursing in general for the flight nurses out there. We'll get you in touch with those resources, and we'll keep you up to date on anything else that Dave and Amanda do that are advocates out here for our profession. So thank you guys for listening. And once again, stay safe out there, nurses.
Thanks for joining Nurse Converse, brought to you by Nurse.org. Help us grow by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Nurse.org supports nurses with career and education tips, life advice, and breaking news. Thank you for all you do and for being you.